Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh?
What are the roots and origins of the World Comedy Expo? Was it intended to begin before 2022 and was delayed by events? Or, and how was the time to put it together vital for setting it up?
We actually have been impacted by the pandemic, no surprise. The team started having conversations about this festival. Actually, they predated my involvement even. I think it was even late 2020 when Saku Yanagawa started sort of assembling a team. I was engaged and asked to be brought on board sometime in early 2021, just as a little bit of a, I was just a consultant at that time. And we did have the original festival scheduled for the fall of 2021. And then just with obviously so many unknowns, and by the very nature of the festival and the idea that folks were going to need to travel in from international countries and other cities
Right.
around the US, we just decided that it was smart to push it 6 months. And I think it was a really good decision.
Well, tell us a bit about the participants, how you gathered them, and what kind of range of comedy you're talking about with them.
So we just did a very word of mouth, organic marketing push for applicants. We just started by reaching out to local folks, and a lot of local comedians are touring internationally, and so they have a network. And so many, I mean, Instagram's the place, it seems, for comedians to be sharing their upcoming gigs and schedules and everything. So, it just as it was a word of mouth thing. And we were extremely surprised and excited by the response. The response was huge. We had, well over 300 submissions for the festival. Unfortunately, not able to take everybody in the first year. But we took a lot. We're up to almost 180 comedians now that are involved in the 27 shows that we put together. So we're really excited about that.
So it's often said that talking about comedy is like dancing about architecture. What can participants or audiences expect to understand about the topic of comedy if they attend either a seminar or instructional event at the World Comedy
Mhm.
Expo?
Yeah, so there's really three different categories of activities happening with the festival. We have live shows, which is the vast majority of the focus.
Okay.
We're doing a couple different panels. One of them I think will be really interesting to any comedy fan in Chicago, which is called The History of Chicago Comedy, which I myself cannot wait to attend. That's going to be moderated by Kelly Leonard and Ann Libra from the Second City, longtime folks from the Second City, amongst other wonderful Chicago people. Saku Yanagawa is going to be doing a panel on touring internationally. So he's the artistic director of the festival and the person who really brought us all together to do this. So he's a Japanese comedian and has done a ton of touring, and we'll discuss various topics that pertain to logistics around touring, but also comedic content and delivery in other countries that perhaps are not from where you were raised. We're doing several different educational workshops. Those would be obviously more for people who are actually in the industry and want to grow their skills and their chops a little bit. And then within the 27 performances, those will be comprised of stand-up showcases that will have a whole collection of stand-up comedians on them. Some 6, 7, 8, 9 even comedians per show. And then we have sketch and improv performances. There'll be 2 groups per bill.
Wow.
And so that's sort of the high level overview of what we're doing.
As a kid or in your developmental teen years, what was funny to you? And how did those roots define how your sense of what is funny evolved?
Oh boy. So I was the biggest comedy nerd. And I'm 53 years old. So
No way.
the I was just actually speaking to a friend yesterday. I think yesterday or very recently was the anniversary of John Belushi's death. And, I so distinctly, I was a huge John Belushi fan, and I so distinctly remember where I was when I got that news. And so so obviously the physical comedy, I referenced John Belushi because I mean, he was just so brilliant, and certainly in the physical comedy world. I mean, I was a huge, like, the Steve Martin, Robin Williams, all of SNL and SCTV. I mean, those were just like the things that just, that got me. But I'm also, I'm really, really interested in, obviously having spent so many years with the Second City, and I'm very, very interested in the use of comedy to address really challenging topics. Is one tool that we can all have to open up that conversation, that really important conversation. And then, once again, from that's sort of like one side of it all the way over to, I mean, you could put Will Ferrell up on the screen right now, and he doesn't even need to say anything, and it'll just bring a smile to my face, because he just, I mean, everything about the way he moves and and obviously speaks is just so hilarious. But so yeah, I'm really kind of all over the comedy map.
All of us have experienced a mental health challenge in the past 2 years. How can comedy and the World Comedy Expo help us to transition back into a more absurdist view of our lives and circumstances?
So on a simple level, what I would say is, I mean, there are, clearly major therapeutic benefits from laughing and absorbing comedy, just like hands down. I mean, at the very least, you're experiencing that sort of release. Also, coming together as a group. I mean, we haven't, sharing comedy with an audience is super important. You can consume comedy and comedic things online, on your phone, watching a movie all the time, and that's fantastic. But sharing that experience in a room, a live room with other people, so wonderful, just from a viewing perspective, but also the interaction between performer and audience. That sort of banter that can go back and forth. It's so uplifting. I mean, and if you walk, I mean, I myself have watched a lot of comedy, as soon as I could. In the past 6 months, tons. And you just walk out feeling good. I love walking out like feeling like, oh, my face kind of hurts, because I've been like really sitting there smiling for an hour. It just makes you, release all the good endorphins and feel good.
Well, Kerry, you certainly danced about architecture very well, I have to say. This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2022.